Good morning and happy Friday. We're going to call to order the Town of Surf City work session on August 15th, 2025. At this time, I would like to call upon Trudy Solomon to lead us in our invocation, followed by Hugh Cannady leading us in our pledge.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us here together today. Thank you for all of the talents and resources that you provide us with on a regular basis here in this town, and the great beauty that you've given us to admire and take care of, Lord. I ask that you help guide us in our decisions and our discussions, mend together all of the hearts and minds of the people in this community to do good and to work together and to strive for the same goals. And we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries to adopt the agenda. Next on is the mayor's remarks. Before we get started on mayor's remarks, I normally do not read these, but I'm going to have just a little statement before we start. So before we start the public comment period, I would like to recommend all of the rules pertaining to public comment. I request that each of you listen carefully and abide by these rules. The public comment period is designed so that the council can hear from you on all topics that the board has control over. The public comment period is not a time for individuals to address matters not a time for individuals to address matters that the board does not have any control over. In order to maintain a decorum, the following rules are going to be strictly enforced. Number one, citizens will address all comments to the board as a whole, not to one individual council person. Number two, each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. At the end of the 3 minutes, you should stop speaking and return to your seat. Discussions between citizens and speakers and members of the audience will not be allowed. Likewise, public comment is not intended to require the board to answer any questions. Your questions, if any, may be addressed at the end of the meeting by the council during their closing comments or directed to the manager for appropriate follow-up. Members of the public are prohibited from engaging in applause, hooting, hissing, or other loud exchanges. Any comments where the primary purpose is to promote a business or a candidacy is not allowed. These rules are necessary to maintain decorum in the meeting. I greatly appreciate each of you for adhering to these rules. And if the attorney wants to follow up on anything okay.
That's well stated.
Okay. At this time, I will call upon Carla to address any public comment. We have none. Okay. I said all that for nothing.
Actually, not for nothing. Yeah, it's for the record.
Okay, item number 1 is solid waste chapter 15 discussion, and Kyle Brewer will present.
Hey, good morning, Madam Mayor and council and members of the public and staff. This has been an item in which we've been discussing internally for a couple of months now, and with some staff turnover, it just did not make its way to the agenda. But what we wanted to do was start off with some discussion amongst the board in some recommended policy changes that would then be turned over into some ordinance updates. So at this time, I did not want to present a red line ordinance amendment just to help generate discussion if there is any regarding some primary points in which we are seeking some modification or clarity. So the items in which we are addressing, and I state we, is we've looked at this as a group effort, so that's where that comment comes from, but is to add definitions to Chapter 15, capture potential modifications in process, addition of vegetative debris collection practices, and provide clarity of standards for potential enforcement actions. So this is just a list of definitions in which Chapter 15 was lacking in regard to providing clarity on what a potential nuisance may look like, what rubbish is, what sharps are, waste, white goods, etc. So to provide clarity for violations, and we're talking about cart violations, is looking at potentially having a first, second, and third warning being the first offense, second offense being a $50 citation, third and subsequent offenses being in the amount of $100. If there is an issue with additional bags being left outside of carts, we would still want to continue to look at the forced enrollment of additional carts being added to accounts, and we'll work with the attorney on specific language that needs to be on there. And then the other thing was that violations would be assessed on a 12-month period, starting from an initial warning or violation, or if an account was taken over by a new property owner or new renter or tenant.
Would that be a rolling 12 months or January 1?
No, it'd be a rolling 12 months, and we would have documentation of any sort of enforcement action that would leave our office.
Thank you.
The functions of the department, we've taken over vegetative debris pickup. The town has always done vegetative debris pickup, since a certain point in the past, but has not really been covered in extensive detail within the ordinance. But basically, looking at yard waste, putting in the ordinance what the standards of that would be. Generally speaking, that's a diameter for sticks or limbs, and length and bundling, as well as putting limitations on the amount of bags that can be placed out for staff to pick up. And then getting into the enforcement of some of the carts, and this is generally, what we've been sort of, I don't want to say struggling with, but have spent quite a bit of time here recently on what is and how do we communicate when lids are open or when lids are closed, because this is a big issue in our community, and feel strongly that recommendations need to come forward to provide standards that protect the town from things like additional vermin and trash being placed throughout the streets of the town. So what we've come up with is that garbage container lids must be closed. Garbage cart lids that are open 12 inches or less will be considered closed for purposes of this part. Now that gives a very clear and defined objective standard in which code enforcement can assess when they go out and do their job. However, I will say in process, I would not foresee our code enforcement out there with a ruler or a measuring stick. We're looking for things that appear to be egregious, and the way that I kind of explain this is, this really is what I call the blackbird rule, where a bird can get on the ledge of a trash cart and start picking at the trash, because that seems to be the instigating action that then creates additional issues with other animals. So once they get the bag open and those smells start to get out, that's where the concern comes in. It also provides the clarity for the code enforcement officer to be able to address that. Again, as noted, vegetative debris in biodegradable paper bags or in small piles, not to exceed 6 cubic yards, and that's based on existing equipment in which the town operates.
Excuse me, Kyle?
Yes, sir.
Question. Okay, biodegradable bags, I get that, that's really good practice. What happens if they keep putting plastic bags out?
Then they would be subject to a warning or a citation. Yep. Because essentially staff would have to remove the vegetation from the bag because we are treating that vegetation in different methods, so.
Has it always been to be bagged? Because I've seen it laying loose on the shoulders.
And it can be loose, it just needs to be stacked up in a pile, not to exceed 6 cubic yards.
For some of the communities that are more like a townhome style community, they tend to put their stuff out collectively. So how do we approach that? Because then essentially we're saying 15 bags per property or essentially that amount. But if you're looking at a community that puts it all out together.
Sure.
Like that's easier for us probably to pick up. So it would make more sense for them to be able to put that out, but just find a way to quantify that for them as well.
We can do that. And the other thing too with this that we run into is people placing vegetative debris on vacant lots.
That's my question.
And we will not allow that because we cannot manage any sort of verbal agreements, contractual agreements that individual property owners may have with each other. And if those agreements aren't there and neighbors are putting vegetative debris on a vacant lot and it perhaps violates the ordinance, that property owner is getting the violation. So it's very hard for us and difficult for us to track that. So we want to eliminate that ability for people to essentially, like a road or a community, we're just going to pile everything on this one vacant lot because Mr. Smith has allowed us to do that.
Is there any difference between, okay, I get the vegetation part, but now if you have an individual who's using his recycling bin and filling it with grass cuttings and stuff, how do we?
Yeah,
is there some of the GFLs
that's a good
there?
question. So in the section of the ordinance that we will bring back a draft for you to look at, trash bins are separate from recycling bins, are separate from vegetative debris, and what you'll see is that recycling can only contain recycling material, cannot be bagged, and then in the trash cart, it's going to be trash can only be put in the trash can, and it has to be bagged within that can, so not loose trash, but that's how we would differentiate that and also have a means for enforcement. Also, too, with our updated solid waste contract, it's very specific in there as to what they will take. So they have the ability to deny service if somebody is putting vegetative debris in a trash or recycling cart. So
I don't know how you're going to, the first thing that popped in my head when you said the 12 inches of the lid, one, that seemed very liberal. Two, the first thing that popped in my head, and I see it all the time, a bag of trash is half in the can, half out the can, but the lid's almost closed. But to me, if that bird or dog gets in that, then it definitely goes on the ground. To me, that's going to be a gray area. I don't know how you're going to enforce based on the conversation we've had so far. Because the lid would have been less than 12 inches.
And I'm pretty sure the language will say that bags must be contained within the cart.
Okay.
But we'll certainly take note of that, make sure the ordinance, and this is why I want to bring it to you all in this format, is to get input and opinions on what you all have heard out in the community. And if you all want us to look at measurement being more restrictive or less restrictive, then let me know. But 12 inches would be the maximum I would recommend.
I understand. I've never really sat in front of my computer and Googled trash can ordinances. I know you have. So I trust your judgment.
How do we, are we considering looking into the fact that some houses that are rental properties have a can for recycling, a can for trash, but in fact, in reality, they need 4 containers. How are we going to add that into this? Is this going to be something that's,
Yeah, and that's where, if there's trash that's being left outside the cart, you're gonna get a warning or citation. If it happens multiple times, that's what I'm talking about, is the forcing of the additional cart that goes onto the account.
because what I just witnessed the other day was my neighbor he had a crowd of people there all last week, and he put out his containers, and there was cardboard and stuff stacked in between the 2 garbage cans. Now, GFL didn't pick it up, but our guys that do the rollback, it was laying on the road. Before they rolled back the cans, they picked it up and put it in the thing, and I just think that's an extra added thing for them to, you know, in reality, the person needs to get another can. I mean.
Yes, and, you know, for instances like that, we would rely on internal communication from our rollback team back to code enforcement to say, hey, you know, 102 Main Street, we have issues here, please, we're not going to touch it, please investigate it, and then we'll roll the carts back, but that's where internal communication needs to occur.
Yeah, because our guys shouldn't have to do that, you know, I feel.
Sure.
They did it without, you know, without question, they just did it, you know. Because
Absolutely.
they weren't going to leave it there, which is good,
Yeah.
but, you know.
Correct. Yeah, I think they did the right thing by picking it up, but there is an additional action that can take place and should take place. And then just lastly, just kind of clarifying, you know, that people have to keep their carts in areas, keep everything clean. We don't want something on the side of the house that's unsightly or unclean, just to be able to continue to promote public health and safety and general welfare. So that's kind of in a nutshell, sort of what we are trying to look at for solid waste ordinance revisions. Again, wanted to bring this to you for just general discussion. Those are the highlights of what we would see as being potential changes. I don't want to say major changes, but just changes in the effect of how we're operating, and the ordinance can then help us build our enforcement policies so that when code enforcement staff is out there, it's rooted in solid ordinance. So happy to answer any additional questions.
A question, so if the, the landowner doesn't live here, it's just a vacant lot, and they're going to get the fine for debris, even though they're not putting the debris there.
Yeah.
They don't, you know, they don't live here, it's a vacant lot. Their neighbor is actually just like cutting the debris and throwing it over.
That's happening on my street, and I don't know that those owners of the lot know it. And so I don't think there is an agreement with Mr. Smith.
Yeah, and,
So-
you know, the action of somebody doing that to another property is not something that we're gonna be able to track
I know,
down.
it's hard to figure out who
I
did
mean,
that.
that becomes like an investigation, and that's not something that code enforcement is going, an investigation from like a civil side, like law enforcement type of investigation, and that's probably where that needs to go, if that is happening, and I'm sure it is.
It's
Sure it is too.
happening.
It's
It's three
illegal
different
dumping.
areas, yeah. 3 different areas on my street.
The property owner more likely should put up a no trespassing.
Oh, absolutely.
consideration.
Cameras or whatever it might be to protect their own property and protect themselves.
What if, excuse me, what if the person that owns the property has given permission to their neighbor to utilize their property? How do
Yeah,
we?
that's what we're trying to avoid, is
Because
because,
in this one particular instance, I'm thinking about the neighbor doesn't have space on his property to put the vegetation without putting it in the street.
Driveway, yeah.
So what he does, and I think we ran into this a couple months back, where he put it on there, and then a sign was posted, no dumping, and the guys told him that he was gonna be in violation. He's, you know, addressed it like, well, my neighbor who owns this lot gives me permission to do this, I have no other place to put it, so
Sure.
how do we?
well, I think that what we can look at, and I think that in some of the draft language we had reviewed, was special accommodations would need to be worked out with the director if those instances occur. You know, again, the volume of vegetative debris that we're picking up is not a volume in which would necessitate a huge amount of area or a large amount of area. So it may be that the property owner has to incrementally dispose of their vegetative debris if they have a large volume of that, or find another resource
The
to.
remark to me was, I've been doing this for 15 years, and all of a sudden now I can't do it. And I said,
Well, and,
Hold on
and
now.
this is, again, sort of from just the communication side of it, we changed the vegetative debris pickup process. It used to only be a couple times a year. And what we wanted to do was make this a more frequent, every month, somebody has the ability to dispose of vegetative debris, to encourage people to maintain their properties. But then the second thing was to encourage people to do regular trimming of dead limbs and things of that nature, so that when we might get a wind event in a certain season, the volume of vegetative debris that is generated from that event may be less than. It's something hard to quantify, but that was sort of the idea in the policy, when we developed the weekly vegetative debris pickup. Yeah,
I
monthly.
guess you do pick up some. 'cause
We-
you
yeah,
stack
we're
the
always
week, you
picking up
stack 'em
veggie
Yeah,
debris,
that's-
but yeah.
You're right, you're right.
All right, any more questions for Kyle concerning the solid waste ordinance revisions? You're just looking for
No, I don't need anything. I wanted to hear what council's thoughts were on this. We'll bring back a red line version of ordinance next month. So you'll have the opportunity to review that and discuss further and refine before these changes come into effect, or potentially come into effect.
Thank you very much. The next item, ordinance amendment, chapter 4, beach strand, and Kyle will present as well.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So as one of your objectives for our shoreline and resilience committee was to review various ordinances within the town code that have to do with the beach strand and updating. Some cases we are looking at modernizing, et cetera. Some of our ordinances have some very old references to things, so just a good opportunity to take a look at this. So the Shoreline Resilience Committee developed a subcommittee to look at Chapter 4 to start with. We will be bringing these in a series to y'all over the next couple of months, as it was decided in that subcommittee meeting that we didn't want to wait until the very end of the project to bring a large package, that we would do this incrementally and be able to give ourselves the ability to discuss each one on its merit. So what we've done is, I'll go over some highlights, is updating the definition of beach. There are some varying definitions that the state uses, that towns use, but essentially we're calling the beach strand or the beach from the dune to the water's edge, and then a distance of up to 1,000 feet seaward of any structure erected thereon. Also talked about lands adjoining coastal waters, revising the ordinance or section on digging holes. We had a very fruitful discussion on this, and ultimately it was decided that if people have a desire to dig a gigantic hole, they're going to find a way to dig that hole. And ultimately, I think the conversation then led to enforcement, and we've got to be proactive with this because of the dangers of these massive holes that we see being dug on the beach, and especially when you start looking at other jurisdictions and some of the tragic events that can happen. People just don't understand the dangers of essentially burying themselves in a hole that there's a lot of weight and force with wet sand. Let's see. Next thing was just talking about jumping from piers, accesses and bridges. Added in there, dune structures, public structures. I've seen people jumping off of crossovers onto the beach or onto the dune. So just wanted to provide some additional language there. Talked about advertisements on the ocean front. So just provided some additional language, talking about, it's unlawful for any person to erect signs, poster billboards, or other advertising on the beach or on private property directly adjacent to the beach. And then providing the exception to this are names and addresses of oceanfront structures to aid in the emergency response process. There's another ordinance adopted by the town that gives standards for beach house signs that are allowed. Another thing that the committee wanted to bring up was how we're addressing containers for transport of food and beverage. Talking about the ordinance currently states it shall be unlawful for any person to take or carry or cause to be carried upon the public beaches or water adjacent there, except for thermos type bottles. This is where you're talking about glass. So what we said was, well, now you have a lot of Tupperware containers that are not single use and that people take, picnic out on the beach. And generally speaking, that's, a little bit more level of responsibility. And we wanted to acknowledge that you could bring a glass container on the beach, so long as it's not single use, so a beer bottle or something else like that. But generally speaking, glass containers are a little bit more rare, but I think it is coming back. The other bigger portion of this was the committee wanted to recommend that plates, bowls, cups, containers, lids, trays, and other similar articles that consist of expanded polystyrene foam or styrofoam, which is a trademarked term, are prohibited on the beach. This does not include the use of coolers or ice chests. So bringing the styrofoam cup or plates would not be allowed, but if somebody wanted to still have a styrofoam cooler, we said that was going to be okay for right now.
Do we want to do that? That seems kind of unreasonable to me.
That's.
I'm not talking about the plates. I'm like, if we're going to say no styrofoam because it's in effect, why allow $3 styrofoam cooler?
I think the committee just didn't feel strongly enough that it was the right time to ban a styrofoam cooler, and that's where their recommendation came.
I'll go with their.
I will say that they all have concerns over styrofoam and litter on the beach. I don't want to, discredit, their concerns because, they knew that some of this stuff was going to be a leap, moving forward. And we also talked about there is a level of education that can be provided to some of the local businesses about offering styrofoam coolers to their patrons, and they may consider not selling them because a lot of times the committee felt like people are coming to the beach buying say beverages of whatever sort, and then buying the cooler where they're buying the beverage. So it's a very immediate type thing. And if that cooler was not available, then, they're either not going to use a cooler or not purchase that. So generally speaking, I don't think we see a lot of folks that are packing styrofoam coolers from their home place and bringing them to the beach. But
I just never seen one that survived.
yeah.
Right.
They always bust. I've never seen one that didn't bust before.
Sure,
that, so.
sure. So that's something we can monitor and keep an eye on. The next item that was brought up was the removal of sand and seashells, and the ordinance allowed for a souvenir purpose to be removed in regard to sand. The committee felt like removing a souvenir purposes for seashells is still okay, but they did want to identify removing of sand not being okay, and that is consistent with other areas within the ordinance, specifically in Chapter 12, where it states that you're not allowed to remove sand from the beach, from parking lots, et cetera. And we will probably add a word in here, the purposeful removal, and I've got a couple of other items that we'll address, but I'll get through these real quick. Another next section was just adding stormwater disposal systems into our list of utilities, being essentially exempt from the section where some development can occur. It still has to be in compliance with Coastal Area Management Act, but it only identified water and sewage or wastewater disposal systems. We added a section as a follow-up to the Vitex portion of the ordinance, and noted that removal of Vitex shall be coordinated with licensed professionals in consultation with the town of Surf City and/or the North Carolina Division of Coastal Management, as there's various methods of removing invasive species, and what we want to try to avoid is somebody going out there and essentially ripping everything out of the dune structure, which will severely compromise that dune, and to go about it in a method in which the town is moving forward with is the very specific application of herbicide, and it's a longer process, but it'll help us maintain the integrity of the dune system. Talking about obstructions on the beach, so this is your beach equipment, chairs and tents, and identifying that being sunset and sunrise. There was a time frame listed with that. A lot of times people like to leave their chair on the beach, et cetera. It creates hazards for wildlife, creates hazards for emergency services, and the town does expend efforts to remove that type of equipment. Also wanted to provide some additional language to provide some protections for emergency responders around emergency accesses, and placing equipment around those areas. Again, there's been some issues in other jurisdictions of where emergency response vehicles are accessing the beach strand, and somebody has a chair or they're laid out on a table, and specifically to the geography of our beach and our emergency access point is you have a very steep drop off there, and you cannot see underneath when you're going over that Hatteras ramp at Access 13. So giving the fire department emergency services a little bit more flexibility in here, and giving them the ability to increase those distances from those emergency access points was certainly noted.
Are we going to put some sort of signage out in those areas then so that people are aware?
Yeah, we worked with Chief and Chief Hobbs as well on doing this. We also have put up a gate at Access 13 so people can't use the Hatteras ramp. Although we understand it's convenient, it really is to drag a cooler, across that Hatteras ramp, but people are using the emergency access and then they're parking in front of it, parking their beach equipment, et cetera. But Chief, if I'm not mistaken, we do have signage up there for emergency access. Okay, just wanted to verify, so. And then we get into vehicle use on the beach. The town of Surf City understandably has supported, fishing actions, people driving on the beach, probably generally during the winter months or fall months. But with the condition and width of the dry sand beach, that ability is very limited. We have not issued a permit to drive on the beach, I don't think since probably before Hurricane Florence. So it's been now 8 years since that has happened. And also too, with 39 public beach accesses within the 6-mile beach strand, access to the beach is widely available. Typically, if somebody is going to necessitate using a vehicle to access the beach and fish or do whatever they're doing, is going to be in more remote areas where like the south end might be a location that might be favorable, or the north end of North Topsail Beach. So at this point, we are recommending removing the ability for commercial driving on the beach, and limiting that to emergency or contracted, some like our doing beach surveys or Vitex eradication, or James needs to do something out on the beach, or then of course emergency response that would need to occur. And then we also beefed this up a little bit and required a spotter to be present when you're on the beach, giving 360-degree visibility of where you're driving. Again, we've had some very tragic incidents in some surrounding communities that we want to try to avoid. And then also during the heavy season would be that you would also require an escort vehicle in the form of a UTV if somebody is in a truck or a passenger vehicle, because it is very difficult to see directly in front of you. So if right now, if somebody need to go on the beach, you're going to have a partner with a UTV to drive, and we have those assets, and they should be utilized to provide safety as much as possible. So the couple of items, those were the main changes within the ordinance. The couple of items that I've heard some comment back from, and I think are all proper, was that just defining vehicle, which we will certainly do. As I noted, the removal of sand and purposely taking, we don't want it to be misconstrued that, if sand blew into my beach bag and I walked off the beach and somebody wanted to complain that I stole the sand, that's not going to be considered purposeful, or, sand on the feet, etc. There was a removal of references to camping within the driving on the beach. We want to make sure that we continue to prohibit camping, so we'll go back in and change that. Want to make sure that crossovers, as they are discussed in here, is private crossovers are contained within the ordinance and providing appropriate access down to the beach, and that leaving equipment, if leaving a chair on your crossover, even if it's within that beach strand area as defined, so long as it's not on the sand, you're still going to be okay to do that. So just a couple of little minor tweaks that we'll work on and get that final draft ready for you for September. But I just wanted to thank the committee for their hard work and their dedication to take this on and do this work on behalf of the town.
So in the last paragraph, or last two paragraphs, as far as like the ocean rescue or ATV, they have to have a spotter?
No, because the UTV provides opportunity for that viewpoint. You can see immediately in front of you, behind you, and to the sides. It's just the passenger vehicles that we have the concern about.
You just want consensus right now, or
Yes, ma'am. And
With it?
anybody have any questions? 100% consensus?
Yes.
Okay. All right, our next item number 3, is the Medlin Dawson Sidbury Annexation petition, and Carla will present.
Yes, ma'am. We have a petition received from Mr. Medlin, which included Ms. Dawson as well as Ms. Sidbury. And this is for 2 additional parcels we just annexed into in the same area off of Highway 50. These are adjacent to that, and he's petitioning to annex 1. It is 42362181820000. That is a approximately half-acre parcel. The second one is Pender County number 42362171860000, also approximately a half-acre. So this is just asking for me to move forward with the investigation.
Anyone have any questions for Carla?
I just need a
This
consensus.
is just a consensus for her to investigate.
Yes.
Thank you, Carla. Item number 4 is a resolution acceptance of sidewalk agreement, and Kyle Brewer will present.
Okay, thank you again, Madam Mayor and Council. As you all are aware, the town has been working with developers of Waterside to really finish out their project. Part of the approval for the project was the construction of sidewalk along Belt Road. It was determined and agreed upon that the contribution of sidewalk would be better suited for the community to be placed along J.H. Batts Road from the intersection of NC 50 and 210 to the intersection of Community Center Drive, providing for pedestrian access to the community center. At that point, the Earl G. and Inez Batts Recreation Complex was not in the park system. So what D.R. Horton is proposing to do, and what the town is working with them on, is to instead of building the sidewalk, is to provide a financial contribution to the town based on engineered cost estimate for that facility. In the general idea that the town would utilize those funds to further the implementation of the Town of Surf City multi-use path plan, where a segment of the multi-use path is located along J.H. Batts. We just didn't want a sidewalk being constructed where the town's ultimate desire was a multi-use path. So what this agreement would do is set the tone and set the standard for the future project for that MUP. The engineer cost estimate for the sidewalk came out to be $222,637. And then furthermore, had gone back to D.R. Horton and said, we can appreciate that. However, a multi-use path requires design. It requires, a bid out process and oversight of any sort of construction contract. So we were able to also put in here an additional contribution of $88,000, which would cover the engineering and professional services to implement the project. And what this agreement does is essentially identify those actions for the financial contributions to satisfy the town's requirements for the sidewalk. So this was presented to me. I wanted to get it onto your agenda so that we can potentially move forward with segment 5 of the multi-use path if council is prepared to do such. So the agreement, I shared it with the attorney, but I'm realizing I have some email issues. I don't know if you got it, but anyway.
You gave it to me and I've replied to it.
Okay,
You're
gotcha.
Good to go.
Okay.
The only thing I would add, Mr. Manager, is that upon payment, they would be able to get COs right away. So you may not see the sidewalks done when we're issuing COs, but that would be in our control after that. That makes sense.
Because phase 4, they're ready to go. They're ready to bond the DOT improvements so that they can get those COs. We've been as flexible with them as possible in order to keep that project moving forward. So again, this would set the foundation for the segment 5 project, and then the subsequent items would be identifying the actual funding for that project. But the agreement is pretty standard, nothing too complex with it. They give us the contributions, and that satisfies their conditions of their approval.
For the estimate for the construction costs, is that a bid that they went out and did, or is that something that we were able to procure?
That is something, so we obtained, through professional engineer, obtained cost estimates on the sidewalk, cost estimates on the multi-use path, so we could compare those. So those were sealed cost estimates that generated these numbers.
I know you originally said that when this started, the Earl G part was not in place, so it was up to the community center. Is this still only up to the community center, or is this going on to the park?
So this would just go up to Community Center Drive. So the town does own the remainder of the property. We will still need to come back and determine specifically how we're going to get from Community Center Drive to Earl G. You know, that'll be the little gap there that we will figure out, and I want input from our parks director and how that's going to flow, and then of course our committee once we get to that point.
For segment 5, is that the way that we have it planned out? Does segment 5 go all the way to the new park?
Yes, it
Okay,
does.
so this is just a portion of that.
It
then.
is, yeah, and then from the park going west up through Earl G up to like Tortuga, et cetera, and then east either through our property or if the tracks over there get developed, being incorporated into those projects. You know, just depends on the timing of that, because the ultimate goal is to get over to Little Kinston and then over to the mainland roundabout and the bridge, et cetera. Because the gap, excuse me, the gap between the mainland roundabout and say Charlie Medlin or even 5210 is so congested with utilities, and primarily the conflicts are the electrical utility there, and there's no feasible project where we could mitigate those impacts, relocate those steel poles, et cetera. It would not be a feasible project.
So given that we get this like financial contribution towards the project, do we have an estimate of a timeline for starting that project?
Yeah, so when we, if the board is so inclined to develop or approve the budget for this, then I've already put out an RFQ for the engineering services, so we'll be prepared to hire that professional service, get into design. There's going to be some coordination with utilities, you know, and the ditches along JH Batts. There's going to be some partnerships in which the town is going to contribute to make this project happen. I can't give you a time now, but we will certainly continue to update the board and, you know, our little multi-use path committee. But there's no reason, if the budget is set, that we would not be able to execute this in a pretty timely fashion. I'm reluctant to give you any months.
Oh, just once we do decide that, you know, we are moving forward, I would go ahead and like contact the business owners there. I do know that, like Gilligan's on the corner, they're expecting this. I mean, they know that it's going to happen, and it's going to happen right there on that side to where they have that additional parking at the time. But once this multi-use path goes in, their parking on that side would go away, correct?
Yeah, yes, because the multi-use path would be contained within the right-of-way. And there's also some temporary construction easements that'll be necessary for, us to work just a little bit outside of the right-of-way. You got a mini excavator that has to do work or whatever it might be. So just like every project that we do, before we get started with something like this, we will notify all those property owners and work in conjunction with them. We also have a project that's being developed right now that shows multi-use paths. So there's additional coordination that's going to have to happen, somewhat similar to the efforts that are going on with segment 1 on 210.
You're just looking for a consensus today?
It's, that is up to the board, if you want to provide consensus or vote on this.
You're just looking for a, whether we vote or a consensus to accept the $2 amounts from D.R. Horton?
And to, allow the manager and attorney to provide final review and approval for it.
Let's keep it consistent and just ask for a consensus.
Sounds.
I agree.
Right, item number 5 is Budget Ordinance Amendment Fund 10.
Okay, so the next 2 items are to budget the residual amount of funds necessary to execute the project. This is again based on the engineer cost estimate for the overall project. So the residual for us to execute that project is going to be at, let's say, 600 and I'm pulling up my stuff right now. Sorry about that, Mayor. Screen here. Is at 668, 663. That's the difference of the contribution of the 222 and change to match the total. In conversation with the design engineer for this, a lot of that cost is tied up in ditch work and piping. This is where we feel like we can seek cost savings of potentially up to $300,000 with the project. I would prefer that we create the project fund to encompass the entire cost estimate, but understanding that there's some work that's going to be done in-house on this, and we will prepare the construction documents and bid documents to reflect that. So we will have to come back to the board to award a contract for the actual construction, and we'll be able to communicate what those cost savings will potentially be. And again, there's still going to be some costs with material purchase, et cetera, but if we can use in-house labor on this, we will save a lot of money with the project. So this portion of the BOA, it appropriates that amount from fund balance and moves it into Fund 55 for the multi-use path project.
Why is this dated June 2nd down here? I'm just curious. Are we signing this and agreeing this today?
I think Carla just prepared it, but
Sorry.
yeah.
Actually, I did not, but.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, there were a
But no,
couple of corrections.
It'll be corrected before it's signed.
I just wanted it cleaned up.
Yep.
Sorry.
We
Okay.
will make sure that the
Okay.
It will be
type is.
I've actually, no problem. I've actually already corrected it, but not before putting it in the packet.
Okay.
In
Thank
the
you.
event that we have the cost savings, do those excess funds just remain in the multi-use path? Because it will just generate towards the next segment that we work on essentially.
That's correct. That's the way that Fund 55 is set up. And that's Fund 55 is a perpetual fund, so it does not have to be rebudgeted every fiscal year, so.
Item number 5, the Budget Ordinance Amendment on Fund 10 is just to remove the 668, 663.
That's correct.
We just need consensus on that today.
Correct.
Yes.
I agree. Yes.
And then Budget Ordinance Amendment Fund 55 is to accept
That's correct.
the 668, 663 into Fund 55 LMUP.
Yes, I agree.
Yes.
Consensus on that as well.
I do have one little side note. I know we got these segments of multi-use path plan. Are there any that are in place that have been completed?
No, not at this time. There's various segments that are in different phases. So right now,
I think I asked that wrong. I knew there wasn't any that were completed. Is there any that we're actually laying down?
yeah. So,
The
Madam
material.
Mayor, if I may, I'll just provide a broad overview. Segment 1 is under design right now. We're working towards a 75% design plan. That's one of the more complex segments due to its relationship with the NCDOT right-of-way. So we really front-loaded the tasks from the engineering side to do all the environmental studies, because that will hopefully qualify us for potential grant funding, and I'll address this later, but, so up to 75%, we're awaiting delivery of that product for segment 1, that is Magnolia Reserve to Station 25. The other segment in which we have forward traction on is the North Shore water line replacement project. So when Mr. Price comes in and does the resilience project, bringing in the new water line underneath the intercoastal, and we've got to go in and dig up the right-of-way on North Shore to put the new water line in, we went ahead and designed the multi-use path to go ahead and be placed on top of that water line. So the grading work and the engineering and design work was put in with the utility project, so that we will be able to come in and essentially all we have to do is construct at that point. We won't have to design. So those are the segments that we have a lot of forward traction on, and then we'll.
Right now, everything is still anything that's going is in design phase. We don't have anything yet in construction.
Nothing
phase.
out to
Okay.
bid yet, but it's going to change.
So this could potentially be the first.
It potentially could, yeah.
Yeah, all right, cool.
Other than, didn't Pierce Development put something down here recently?
Yeah, at Shell, up there. Yeah, they've got a couple more portions with that development, and then, what was I gonna say? Just the incremental installations of the multi-use path that go in with new development. You got Chapel by the Bay has submitted on 210 next to Saltwater Landing. So a lot of these things could, pretty exciting, things are gonna start falling into place
Excited
very
about it.
quickly, so.
Any other discussion on the LMUP? Okay. Anything from the attorney? Good.
All right, I know we have a closed session coming, and before we go into it, I just want to make sure the public knew that depending on what occurs in closed session, you may or may not have action taken afterwards in open session. So if there's anybody in the public that wants to stick around to see whether action's taken or not, you're welcome to stick around.
At this time, do I have a motion to go into closed session?
I'll make a motion to go into closed session.
I'll second.
All those in favor, should I state you want me to state this?
It's for personnel
Okay.
reasons,
Okay,
yes.
for personnel. So I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We are in closed session. Do I have a motion to come out of closed session?
I'll make a motion to come out of closed session.
A second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. We are out of closed session. No action was taken in closed session. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. We are closed.